Alright, good evening everybody. Welcome to the War Games Podcast number 2. Tonight we're going to be covering Operation Crimson Moon Phase 6 for Task Force Charlie as well as Task Force Bravo. And joining me tonight is going to be First Lieutenant Hammersman, or simply Hammer. Hammer, go ahead and say hello to everyone.
Hello everyone.
So, Hammer was the task force commander for Task Force Bravo, which we will get to here shortly. First, we're going to be covering Task Force Charlie. And I filled in for Task Force Charlie. I was not Task Force Commander. I also was not Zeus. I actually filled in as a automatic rifleman, so I was carrying the saw the entire night. Now, I don't really have a whole lot to go over for Task Force Charlie, as, again, I wasn't in a command position. So I didn't really have a big picture necessarily of what all was going on. The operation itself was pretty straightforward. We air assaulted in, got out of the birds, began movement. Not long at all after we began movement, we came under some marksman fire. And I believe the task force commander, which was Captain Drumheller, ended up calling in a hellfire on the known position of the marksman, and ended up smoking his ass with a hellfire. Now, once we really got into the AO, we came under fire from some type of autocannon. I myself never seen exactly what it was. It sounded like a Zeus cannon with how high the rate of fire was. But I never actually seen it myself. At one point, we did get eyes on a large roadblock with a bunch of guys around it and stuff, but that wasn't our direct objective to move into there, so we peeled back and continued movement. I also know at some point there was some type of attack helicopter in the air. Guys kept calling it out as a Hind. I don't know. I personally never seen it, and guys are in the bad habit of calling every attack fucking helicopter a Hind. So, never seen that. Once we finally did get into engagement, we started engaging the FARP, which is a forward arming and refueling position. We started engaging about 400 meters out, and we're dropping targets pretty easily, and then we got the order to push up. And once we did push up, we got up to this small house with a fenced-in backyard, and I was on the backside of the fence. A couple other guys had pushed right up to the house, and this fucking BRDM pushed pretty much right up on top of our position and just started laying waste to guys. And our rifleman, who was carrying the law, ended up getting a hit with the law, and it did pretty much dick all to the BRDM. And I was yelling and screaming at guys to, get behind cover, hit the fucking thing with 40 mics, hit it with an AT4, something. And apparently the rifleman in the other team carrying the AT4 was knocked out momentarily. When he did wake up, he was eventually able to take out the BRDM, but it took a long goddamn time. Now, once we moved from that position, we pushed up on a kind of a bunker complex with a bunch of HESCOs all around. And when we went to push in, I went along the right wall. And as I went along the right wall, nobody really went left. Not the way that they should have, that's for damn sure. They kind of froze right at the left side of the entrance and just sat there. And I looked left and seen there was nobody there, and there was about 4 or 5 guys on the back side of the HESCOs just sitting there staring at me. And I started engaging and kept moving to the right to try and get an angle behind the corner of this building to get some cover. And in the process, I ended up taking a couple rounds and getting knocked out. And by the time I had woke up, they ended up dispatching those guys. But it took quite a while because guys just froze up. They would not breach into that compound for whatever reason. Once I woke up, I went to move around the back side of that building that I tried to use for cover. And I peeked the corner, and there was 5 or 6 guys on the back side of that building. And I immediately returned fire, dropped back behind cover, chucked a frag grenade. And when I peeked the corner again, I seen that the frag had taken out 2 or 3 of them. I dropped another 2 or 3 with the saw and ran out of ammunition. I had to reload. So I dropped back behind cover rather than putting a new belt in and having to worry about one of the guys pushing the corner on me. Pulled my sidearm, went to hit the corner again and re-engage, and immediately got dropped. Now, this was where I seen the biggest issue of the entire night. And that was when I was dropped, everybody in the area immediately stopped whatever they were doing and came over there and pulled me out of the way and instantly started working on me medically, and nobody pushed the corner and started clearing the backside of that building, which was a huge fuck up. Had a single one of those guys thrown a frag around the corner like I had, but in the opposite direction, he could have very easily dropped 6+ guys with a single frag grenade, because everybody's immediate attention was to start bandaging me, and no one went to eliminate the threat that dropped me, despite me calling them out multiple times. And that's a huge, huge no-no. And I'm sure, Hammer, you've seen guys do shit like that multiple times, right?
Well, you're more popular than I am, so I mean they're more willing, to run over to you quickly and try and rescue you. But you're absolutely right. It's easy to get that tunnel vision when dealing with casualties, and it's good because at the same point, you're willing to go and put yourself in that way to try and help that person. But at the same time, it's easy for people to ignore the reason why they went down in the first place. If someone's down by a corner and you go and stick your head out and try to drag that person back and try to be a hero, you're likely to end up in the same position as they did.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that, it's not that you shouldn't try and aid that person, but it kind of defeats the purpose if you're trying to aid them and, the guy that shot them can just walk around the corner and now shoot you as well. So yeah, that was, like I said, that was the biggest issue I had in Task Force Charlie filling in, was that situation of just, firstly, the guy's not breaching the compound, and that actually happened a little bit before that. I was the one that initiated the breach on the compound because we were getting grenades thrown at us, GP-25s launched at us, and everybody was just sitting there. There was a group of like 10, maybe 15 guys just all piled up towards the front of this compound, and guys were getting injured and shit. I was like, we have to push in. Like, we can't just fucking sit here. And they were all just froze. I don't know if it was just they didn't know what to do or they were scared or what, but we had to push forward in that situation. We couldn't just sit there. And the same happened when we finally did breach the compound. Like I said, I was the first one in, and I was probably 20, 30 meters ahead of everybody else. By the time I got in there, just nobody followed me in. And that's a big problem that I see, not just with that situation in general, but throughout the entire unit, is that guys don't push, especially in a CQC situation where, you can't stay stationary. You have to keep moving. Otherwise, the enemy is able to get a fix on your position. And I know that's something, that myself and Hammer have done a lot of, and we've done it a lot together, is Mout and CQC and stuff. And that's, that's something that we've always done, is we push very, very hard in Mout because of that fact. If you stop, if you let the enemy hold you up, you're just putting yourself in more danger.
Well, I think of it too as when you have, two fire teams or whatever, and you're stuck at a choke point, whether it be a opening, a door, a compound entrance, whatever it may be, HESCO barriers, etc. I mean, you have people behind you there to support you that are unable to support you because the point man is basically the only person there at the corner able to do anything. And the minute you push in and your entire team or squad or whatever it is pushes in with you, it's basically a force multiplier in that situation as well. If you go in, you need to know that your guys are going to be behind you. Otherwise, like you said, you're just, shit up a shit creek without a paddle. But once you all get in there and there's 4 of you with guns down range at the bad guys, I mean, the likeliness that you're going to survive breaching that point is just exponentially greater.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's the old phrase, two in fast, make them hesitate. You get as many rifles in that room or that building or that compound, whatever it may be, you get as many rifles in there as you possibly can, because A, yes, it makes the enemy hesitate. B, it provides you that much more firepower on that potential threat. And that's why we always preach to, breach quickly. And, granted, it is much harder in Arma than what it is in real world. I mean, CQC and real world flows much, much smoother than what it ever does in Arma, because you're not using WAS and D to move your fucking body around, and you can twist at the hips and shoulders and shit like that, but still, it's the same principle, and it does still apply to Arma. But like I said, that was really my only gripe with Task Force Charlie. Other than that, everything went great. By the end of the operation, we were set up in a farmhouse, or in a farm barn. There we go. And I was actually up in the second story, and they have there was this little circular window up in the second story, and it made an absolutely beautiful murder hole. And if you guys don't understand what a murder hole is, essentially, you have a small window or a small opening that you're able to back up from, and you're able to fire through that. And it gives you excellent fields of fire, but it gives the enemy very little to actually hit you. You have great cover. Basically, all they can see is probably your weapon system and maybe part of your face. And that's the entire purpose of a murder hole. And they work great. But the thing to always keep in mind with a murder hole is the whole idea of it is that you back up from the actual hole itself. So, you know, those movies or, you know, whatever you see of a sniper sticking his gun out the window or a hole or something like that, like, no, that's not how it's done. That just lets guys know where you are. If you back up into the room and fire from inside the room, then they have no idea where you're actually at. They, at that point, have to locate you based upon sound rather than sight, which is much more difficult, especially when you're firing from inside of a building. So I had a great position there. Unfortunately, that was mission complete, though. We ended up capturing the FARP, had no other contacts roll down on us from the north, which we were expecting heavy reinforcements coming down the northerly MSR, but they never came. So obviously they were okay with giving up that position. So that was the end of Task Force Charlie for me. Now moving on to Sunday night for Task Force Bravo. Now, those of you that were watching, you'll know I was Zeus for Task Force Bravo, and Lieutenant Hammersmain was the Task Force Commander. So he was in charge of everything on the Blue 4 side, and basically I was in charge of everything on the Op 4 side. So we basically get the two commanders to sit down and talk about what they did, which never happens in the real world. So Hammer, from your perspective as Task Force Commander, kind of walk us through the operation, start to finish, how it went for you and so on.
Sure. Essentially, our objective was to rescue POWs that had been captured a number of phases beforehand during a Task Force Charlie operation. What had happened is a weapons squad got cut off. I believe it was Havoc 3-4, so 3rd Platoon Alpha Company. And due to a number of issues that occurred that evening, they got cut off from the rest of the platoon and task force, were surrounded, wounded, and then gathered up and put into trucks and then ferried off to a makeshift prison camp. From there, they were then relocated to a more heavily defended prison camp, which was basically a castle that was repurposed for this reason. And then, heavily fortified position on top of a hill. So the entire assault that we had planned was essentially a very fast uphill assault, using supporting elements to basically run up the hill at this castle from a couple different directions, from the left flank and the right flank, and then to seal off any sort of reinforcements with air assets and mortars. So our objective was to basically go along a couple rally points. As you can see right now in the video, we're going to be taking off pretty soon to head towards those rally points. Secure the prisoners. Go ahead.
I must say real quick, sorry for cutting you off, but I didn't look at the op order for Task Force Bravo until afterwards. And to look at that op order, any of you guys that are in the unit, look at that op order, and that is a textbook assault of an enemy fixed position. Like, it does not get any better than that as far as planning it and following that plan up all the way up and through. That is an exact, basically textbook of what you're supposed to do to assault an enemy fixed position with an infantry platoon. Carry on.
And just to expand off that a little bit, in general, what we had planned is that after the second rally point, you can kind of see the map up on the screen at one point in this video right now. After we get to the second rally point, we'd split into a couple different elements. We'd have the supporting elements on the left flank, which is essentially an elevated ridge, which has the best chance of seeing around the objective, which is where we put our weapon squads as well as the supporting squad. The other two routes from Rally Point 2 involve rifle squads going in on the left flank of the castle and the right flank of the castle, essentially like a pincer movement, depending on where we could breach, because we didn't really know, where we could get into the castle. There's a MSR essentially heading out of the east and west side of the castle, or the objective area, or bullseye, or whatever you want to call it. And so we knew there was certainly access on each end. Sometimes when going in, we don't know if there's fortified positions, roadblocks, HESCO barriers, whatever, that are impeding our route of travel. So it's good to plan accordingly for that. So get in, we'd secure the castle, the objective, we'd rescue the prisoners, we'd establish a defensive position. From there, we'd establish 360 security, and then we'd call for extract of the prisoners. The prisoners would have been flown out by Black Hawk, and then back to base. And then from there, depending on how much time left in the operation, we would actually seek and destroy additional enemy forces in the area to basically route their position. According to the warning order that we saw before we planned this operation, about a click and a half or 2 clicks to the east of the objective was additional enemy reinforcements. PRNA forces are the primary enemy that we were facing, that were coming in or possibly to reinforce from the eastern flank. So that was our main concern once we were there, to deal with those reinforcements on the eastern flank, extract the prisoners safely, as well as worrying about the assets that we have, air assets primarily. We didn't want a bird going down. And then judge the next step from there. As you can see, if you've watched the video already, as well as the different perspectives of this task force, it didn't really go as planned, which it never does. But at the same point, it was certainly a eventful evening, and so that's pretty much the summary of what we were planning to do, at least.
Well, I can say from a Zeus perspective, when you guys stepped off, moving on foot, because it really wasn't that far. It was only a couple clicks from where you guys were at. So you guys started moving through the woods, typical platoon column. Everything was going well. And you guys ended up running into a couple of roving squads out in the trees. But you guys were made aware of their presence before you ever actually engaged them. I heard air assets calling them out, getting them marked, letting you guys know exactly how far away you were from them, that they were closing on your position, so on and so forth. So that was air showing exactly what it is we use them for. Really, guys get kind of hung up on, CAS and seeing gun runs from Thunder and stuff like that, but that's not really their primary role. Really, their primary role is to provide us with intelligence and let us know what's going on around us. And they did that perfectly Sunday night, especially right at the start there. Like I said, they let you guys know what was coming before any of you could have possibly had eyes on them. And so when that engagement did start, there was nothing I could do as Zeus to really inflict any damage on you guys, because you guys were already set up and ready for them. And the second they showed themselves, they got mowed down. Within 15, 20 seconds, that first squad was completely done. And even the ones I had reacting to that first engagement, you guys knew where they were every step of the way. You were constantly being updated by air assets, and every time they would show themselves, they just got smashed. So the entire approach to the castle was just perfect. There was no stopping you guys, really, as you approached that castle. There was nothing I could do at that time, especially considering there was no type of IDF set up in the castle. They had no mortars, no artillery, nothing like that. So there was really nothing they could do to slow you guys down. And once you guys did get eyes on the castle is kind of when it started to go south, because that is when the weapons squad 2-4 was able to get eyes on the AA vehicles that were in the area, being a couple of Tunguskas that we had set up. And 2-4 took the shot on one of the Tunguskas with the Maws. Beautiful shot, I may say. I didn't even think they would have eyes on it, let alone be able to get a firing solution on it. And they hit 2 of those Tunguskas from a long fucking ways out there. However, the first one they hit is what kind of made the whole show go sideways. And at the time, you guys had no idea what had happened. But essentially, the Tunguska got hit by the Maws. Ace takes over, causes the cook-off, unfortunately, which is something that, I have talked about in multiple streams, that I don't like the Ace cook-off. I wish that we could tone it down and at least make it so that only some vehicles cook off, that it's just kind of a random chance that they'll cook off, because it's incredibly unrealistic that every single vehicle cooks off like that. But, that's something we have to deal with right now. And unfortunately, that cook-off, one of the rounds managed to make it over a probably 10 to 20 meter wall and land right in the center of where all the POWs were, and immediately killed all 8 of them, or 9 of them, whatever it was. Didn't harm a single Op 4 around them, but killed every POW on impact. And as I said, you guys had no idea that was the case, what had happened, anything like that. So you guys began your assault on the castle, still assuming that they were all alive and well in there. And how did that assault go for you guys?
Well, just to step back a little bit, because we had eyes in from both the A-10 Warlord, our Apache, and then the drone. And we knew that something was going on with the prisoners because they were laying there.
Yeah, I did hear them pass word to you that they did have eyes on them and they were possibly down. I forgot that I did hear that.
And I made the call to not send that down to the platoon because, number one, that's such a morale buster right there. As we're going and doing this mission, we're going to rescue our guys. And then we're not even doing the objective, and it's hey, by the way, they're all dead. And number 2, we didn't really know, because at that point we did see an Op 4 inside the cage with them, like a guard inside there with them. So at that point, being that the wall was there, we basically received the opinion of the air assets as well as the TAC-P that, it was extremely unlikely that they were killed by cook-off, because that was my first concern. It's okay, that goes off. I saw the markers on our tablets, so I knew it was relatively close. But they said, no, it's on the other side of the wall. It's extremely unlikely that they did that. And so my assumption was that they were executed based on the fact that they knew we were coming. And so I decided to not relay that down because, number one, everything was going textbook. To kind of go back to that communication of us knowing where other squads were during the movement towards the assault point. It was a perfect textbook example of information going throughout the chain of command. We had the air assets relaying to the TAC-P, who relayed to me, who relayed to the infantry platoon leader, to the squad leaders, to the fire team leaders, to the guys on the ground. And within seconds after I gave that information, I heard team leaders and team members talking to each other and be like, hey, there's another squad coming up over this hill, just in a matter of seconds. That's how quick and efficiently that flow of information should be. And I was extremely proud of the guys doing that, because it makes me happy when that happens. And to send that news down that, oh, by the way, everything we're doing today is kind of pointless because, these prisoners are more than likely dead. It was something I decided to do. I'm just nope, we'll figure it out once we get there. We'll figure out hopefully what happened, and we'll just make this the best assault we can.
Right. Yeah, I think that was. I would agree. That's the right call to not send that down, because that is a big hit to morale. You could argue that would, kind of get the guys fired up and make them want to fight harder, but I don't really think that's the case. Not when it's friendly POWs that everybody was looking forward to finally rescuing those guys. Not just the guys in that operation. Everybody in the entire unit was chomping at the bit to get that mission to go pull those guys out. So yeah, that would have been a big hit to morale to pass that information down. But once you guys did the assault and got in there, and again, it was a perfect assault. I mean, stuff got mowed down pretty much with hardly any resistance. You guys were able to get in there very, very quickly. Now, that was somewhat done on purpose on our side as Zeus because we wanted you guys in that castle for the second phase of the operation, which once you guys got into the castle, realized the POWs were dead, and we're just kind of, figuring out what was going on, what was going to happen, and so on. That's when the second phase of the operation kicked off, which for those of you guys that didn't see it was essentially the troops that we thought were, they were neutral to us, the Mosin, M-O-S-N, Mosin as we nickname them. Have been neutral to us this entire campaign. However, Sunday night, they launched a huge assault on Havoc 2, or Task Force Bravo. And that was the second phase of the operation. As soon as Task Force Bravo was set up in the castle, and kind of deciding what was going to happen from that point, is when Mosin attacked. And it was a very large-scale attack. Basically, right off the start, it was a platoon, maybe 2 platoons worth of infantry, and multiple vehicles, as well as mortars, almost all at the same time. So what was that like for you on the ground? I know listening to the radios and stuff, there was some confusion as to who it was. Was it Mosin? Why were they attacking us? So on and so forth. What was it like for you on the ground in that situation?
Well, it was obviously confusing. I mean, just because. Well, yeah, it was confusing. At the same time, it wasn't confusing because, I mean, if someone's shooting at us, we're going to shoot back regardless of what, color their camouflage is. But the first thing that I noticed, I didn't see any troops really with the camouflage. That didn't stick out to me, but it was an armor piece. It was one of those Tunguskas, or it was a Zeus cannon. I don't remember what it was that came around that had a different color camouflage on it. And I was just staring at it for a while. I was on top of the castle tower at that point. And that's where the news came over the radio of like, well, those guys look like Mosin. They don't look like PRNA or Piranha forces. So all of a sudden that thing opened up, but it's just like, well, that pretty much sealed the deal there. I don't know if we pissed them off first or if they initiated contact. It's impossible for us to figure out what exactly happened, but it was very clearly that this was a planned assault or a planned counterattack on our position. So. At that point, it was just like, well, regardless of who pissed who off, I mean, we just got to hold our ground and shoot back. So
right, and that's exactly right, and that's like I said, there was confusion as to who it was and so on and so forth. And like you said, in that situation, especially as a command element, it doesn't matter who the fuck it is. They're engaging us. Engage back. We'll figure out who said what or who did what or so on after. But first and foremost, shoot them. And that was expected, but that confusion was kind of what we were counting on, and especially when we sent in the special forces, which are the guys all in black, they were able to get in very close, because they're special forces. That's what they do. And I did hear, multiple times guys calling out that they had, contacts danger close right on top of them, and that was the special forces, the Mosin special forces, and guys had never seen them at that point. We haven't had any encounters with the Mosin special forces. We've seen them via our S2 briefs, but we've never worked in an area with them, so I think guys were a little put off by that, just not knowing at all who they were, just guys in black fucking tier 3 armor and shit showing up, engaging them from 50 meters away. But the thing that impressed me is, especially once the mortars started going off and started impacting, there was some casualties here and there. But the thing that impressed me was the communication. At no point in time did it ever slow down. Not even the slightest bit. If somebody got wounded, 2ICs were instantly up on Freak, and the flow of information was just insane how quickly it was, both down and up the chain. Even with all of that going on, guys were constantly communicating what they were doing, who they were engaging, whether they needed help medically or with engaging threats, so on and so forth. They were always communicating what was going on. And that impressed the shit out of me, especially with how much we were throwing at you guys. They didn't falter in the slightest.
Yeah, and that's something that is a very big testament as to how Havoc 2 has been working with their guys, and especially with leadership development, which I suppose is kind of an overall theme of the podcast at a certain point. Because not only is it important that you know what you're supposed to do as a leader in a role, but also ensure that if you're not there, or if you need to step up to a higher position given in any sort of circumstance, that the person below you knows the job, and the person behind them, make sure your second and third in commands know how to do the job, because there are times where they're going to have to step up and lead. And that's what happened. I was, when we were doing the briefing and getting the platoon together and the task force together, one of the things that the platoon leadership told me is like, hey, we have a lot of 2 ICs that are leading tonight. And as a task force commander, that's always just like, oh, red flag, because these are guys who don't have the most experience. This is really their only opportunity to gain experience, unless if their squad leader or team leader is properly training them during their squad trainings on how to be a leader in the 2 IC role. And so that made me nervous before we stepped off, just because of that fact. But despite that, I mean, like you said, it was absolutely amazing as to what these guys were able to do. And so, being that a lot of 2 ICs were in the leadership position already, and then when they go down for mortar fire or whatever, that their 3 IC or 4 IC in certain circumstances would step up on the radio right away and ensure that communication kept flowing. And that's just a huge props to Havoc 2 for making that happen. That was outstanding.
Yeah, they definitely did a very, very good job. And very quickly, to kind of touch off subject here, I just want to throw a quick thank you to Copenhagen for donating the $10. Thank you for the continued support of the channel, brother. And to get back to the operation, our whole goal as Zeus that night, it was myself and Sergeant Brewer, the other brewer, medical brewer, no relation. Our goal was to make you guys fall back, was to make you guys extract. Knowing that you would want to extract the prisoners, that's why the attack happened so quickly after you guys got in the castle, was because we wanted you guys to call the birds in for extract and force you guys, to get out of there. And either, you guys leave or we shoot the birds down with you in it. And obviously with the POWs being killed, you didn't really have a reason to call for extract, other than us trying to put enough pressure on you to force you guys to pull back. But that being said, there was a lot of talk, especially in my chat, as to why you guys weren't pulling back and this and that. And I agreed with your call to stay there. At no point in time were you guys ever threatened with being overrun. The infantry weren't able to close that distance, especially given the position you guys had. Yes, it was very high and there was a lot of very steep defilade around you, but guys were still able to effectively engage. And, the mortars hitting, the IDF was effective. However, the medics were more effective. They were able to get guys back up fairly quickly. And even when they didn't, the 2 ICs, again, this goes back to, proper leadership and training, junior leaders and so on. The 2 ICs were so quick to step up and just kind of pick up like nothing happened and keep the ball rolling, that at no point were you guys breaking down and having to call in extract to pull back. You didn't need to. And I agreed with that decision as a task force commander. I wouldn't have pulled back either. I wouldn't have called in for extract. You guys were never under threat of being overrun. So our plan pretty much went out the fucking window as Zeus operators. I hit you guys with everything we could within reason. And it wasn't gonna dislodge you guys. And that, at least I would think that's what was going through your mind as task force commander was that, hey, we're not in any danger here. I have no reason to pull my guys back. And is that kind of the mindset you had at that point?
Yeah, I at really no point did I feel like we needed to pull back, because there's a number of different indicators. Being a task force commander, kind of keeping the pulse of the task force, just to see if we need to pull back. The first one, obviously, is KIAs, because KIAs remove people from the battlefield, wounded in action, and people who are brought back up. They're brought back up in the fight quickly, even though that we were actually down a medic for this entire task force operation.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
I didn't have a company staff medic for this, which at the same point was a pro and a con, because a pro being the fact that we did okay even without that extra medic, but a con in the way that usually the medic is telling me how the casualties are doing.
Right.
That information will be sent up the chain, and I know how many KIAs are wounded in action or what mass cases are going on. So that was kind of a piece of the puzzle that was missing from my perspective. So all of that stuff had to go through Platoon HQ to me on company net versus the medical net. So the first one being KIA. The second one is basically resupply, ammunition, that sort of thing from the task force. I mean, how are we doing on ammunition, mortars, as well as air assets? Being a task force commander, as you know, we are in control of, commanding
everything.
The air assets, as far as, their ability to unleash hell on the enemy, or do we pull back the reins? The balance of the supporting assets in relation to the infantry platoon is something that you and I and the captain are always more erring on. Let the infantry have more fun. So really, at no point are we going to be like, unless shit hits the fan, all right, air assets, broken arrow, kill everything you see outside of a 500-meter radius around our position, because we're in, a lot of hurt right now. There were a couple times during the operation where I gave air assets clearance to basically wipe out everything on a certain flank, but at no point did I say, hey guys, we're struggling. I need you to basically do whatever you can to help us. And that was something that I didn't have to do, being in that position. So that was another indication that I was like, okay, we don't need to pull back. During the end of the fight, there was a need for resupply because we were getting black on AT from the weapon squads. We still had the ability to take out armor from Fixed Wing as well as Warlord at that point in time, so it wasn't necessarily crucial. But a big part of that decision as well was, okay, we're able to get in resupply from a Blackhawk at our position, and depending on the success of that resupply, which was pretty risky, it's an elevated position, we're getting attacked from 3 different flanks. If they can get it in and it works, then we'll stay. And thankfully that did happen. We were properly resupplied, and that really tipped the scales and like, okay, perfect, we're here. Another one was those damn mortars. Even though we were getting mortared, and like you said, we did kind of outlive them with the medics doing their job and keeping as many people up as possible. It was essentially one of those things where, oh fuck, I just lost my train of thought. The medics essentially were able to keep them up. Resupply came in, and then we weren't able to find the mortars, so we were getting shelled for about an hour. Thankfully, near the end, we did find them, and then the mortar stopped, and that really was just like, okay, that was pretty shitty, but you put them in a very tight spot, by the way, and even though they were just like 500 meters away, but
yeah, they were pretty damn sneaky.
But the mortars was really the only big threat, even though we were getting assaulted from platoon sizes from, multiple different flanks. The mortars were the ones doing the damage.
Right, and that was, that's kind of what I figured what was going to happen. With the mortars being in that position, I knew it was going to be very difficult for you guys to see them. If you guys weren't going to be able to see them, I knew that because they were below a little bit of defilade as well as some good foliage. And air assets, it was going to be very difficult for them to see them because they couldn't push very far north because we had no idea what was north of the castle, really. So they didn't want to push their limits there. And like you said, it was in a pretty tight position. They were right up against a tree line, basically with just enough room to fire those rounds without hitting the treetops. So I knew it was going to be very difficult for air to, engage them. So, yeah, basically at no point were you guys in a threat to where you needed to call in extract and get the guys out of there, which, we worked our asses off as Zeus to make that case. So, there was a point in my stream where, it was a good 5 to 10 minutes of just pure silence from me, because I was concentrating so hard on moving troops, dropping guys, and so on and so forth. I couldn't do anything but Zeus. I couldn't interact with the chat at all, which is fairly uncommon for when I'm Zeusing. But in that situation, to put that kind of pressure on you guys, it took a lot of work from both of us at the same time. And I think that's something that has greatly improved our operations, especially as of late, is being able to have those 2 Zeus operators. We're able to put a lot more pressure on the infantry, on the task force as a whole. We're able to put a lot more pressure on there having 2 Zeus operators. And have you noticed a kind of uptick in difficulty and pressure as far as the operations for this deployment?
Yes, but this is also like the first deployment I've ever led task forces into. Well, that's a lie. I guess I did at the end of the last one. But,
yeah.
But, so I've only been doing this for about 6 months. So with that in mind, it really is dependent on a number of things, because even though you guys worked your asses off for this mission, given the circumstances, we pulled out on top in this one. There was another defense mission I ran. I don't remember which task force. I think it was Task Force Bravo again, where we were confined to essentially a little cop that was about, probably less than half the size of the castle area that we were defending. And you guys slammed us really good on that, just because we had to be in such close proximity to each other. There was really no place for us to spread out and gain real estate and to mitigate that IDF threat. Whereas here, we had an entire ridgeline along with that castle, along with bunker fortifications on the east and west flank. So we can spread out those 60 guys more effectively, reduce the IDF threat. Whereas there, we're stuck in a small cop surrounded by HESCO barriers and bunkers, most of which were destroyed from IDF. So basically, those type of parameters from the mission, whether it be what you're defending, what you're assaulting, are just have such a huge impact on our success rate, and also have a huge impact on you guys being able to rail us from a Zeus perspective.
Right, and that's and this was actually real quick. I forgot to mention that you, as task force commander for Sunday, this was your first time back commanding a task force for what was a month that you were on LOA while you went through Europe, right?
Yep.
So it must have been pretty nice to be able to kind of jump back in the saddle and everything to go as smoothly as it did, despite, shit going kind of sideways at the start there. It still went pretty goddamn well. I'm sure that was pretty nice to be able to come back to that.
It was. Even though it was a mission failure, it was the best possible form of mission failure, I guess.
Right. And very quickly, I would like to thank Coble for the $5 donation. Thank you for the support of the channel, brother. And since we did have a guest sneak in here, if you will, Cap, I know you were filling in Sunday for Task Force Bravo. How did you enjoy Phase 6 with Task Force Bravo?
Well, first of all, I don't sneak. I kick indoors.
Well, there's that.
From my perspective, I was just an automatic rifleman and as a member of a fire team, so I didn't get any of the higher up stuff. But it's one of those missions where sometimes you're in a really good position and you see a bunch of enemies and you get to shoot them, and sometimes you get shit luck and you're on the fire team that's watching a position where nothing's happening, even though it's one of the busiest ops you've ever seen, or the task force has ever seen. You don't get to see anything. I was in the position where I got to see all of the enemies and shoot them.
So it was pretty good.
For me, at least. A lot of times, like I said, there can be really, really, really good ops where, individual guys are like, that op sucked for me because I just happened to be at the places where the enemies weren't. But I happened to be the places the enemies were, and I had a 249 with that MDO.
Yes.
And I destroyed everything that I saw.
And that optic is amazing. For any of you guys that haven't seen it, which if you watch my channel is pretty much impossible, because anytime I fill in, I use the saw, and that's the optic I use is the MDO. And you are turned into a fucking killing machine with that thing in combination with the saw. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, the DMR came up, or the DM came up on my position once, and he was popping rounds off, and like he just kept shooting and shooting and shooting while I was shooting, and I was like, "What are you doing, man? You're supposed to be killing him, not me."
Yeah. Well, that optic, it basically turns the goddamn saw into an MDO. I mean, I was smoking guys with headshots at 400, 500, 600 meters with it in Task Force Charlie. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So yeah, it's and like you said, there's those operations where it could be the most chaotic operation the task force has ever seen, but you just happen to be in that situation where you don't see any action, and that's something that we try to prevent as much as possible. And I know yourself also, being a Zeus operator, it's something as Zeus we have to stay cognizant of at all times. Where hey, if these guys aren't seeing any action, what can we do to give them some action so they're not bored, so they're not just sitting there. And that's something that we have to pay attention to on top of everything else that we're doing, which is why a lot of the times, guys, when it comes to watching Zeus operators or whatever, are like, hey, do this, or hey, do that, and this and that. And first of all, 99% of the time, their request, or more so their fucking demands, are retarded because they make absolutely no sense. And like I had to point out in this operation, I had somebody saying, oh, you should do this or you should do that. And it's like, look, dude, I don't need you to tell me how to do my fucking job as a Zeus operator.
Look at that platoon line on the video right now.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty beautiful.
Pretty. Holy shit.
And it's one of those, because guys watching, and I know it's the same thing for you, Drum, in your chats and stuff, guys are always wanting to see everybody just get fucking absolutely raped. And it's like, you wouldn't be talking like that, you wouldn't be saying, oh, you should do this, if you were in the fucking operation getting raped yourself. You would be pissed the fuck off. It's only because you're not in there, you're not going through that you're like, yeah, fuck them up and this and that. You look like a fucking ass. If you want to play operations like that, go build your own community of a couple hundred fucking people and do operations like that, and let me know how it fucking works out for you. And that's always been one of my biggest pet peeves as Zeus, is people thinking, hey, you should do it like this.
They'll get removed from their Zeus spot pretty damn quick if they start doing
exactly
stuff like that.
And that's, like you said, they get removed. I mean, we have a very strict policy when it comes to how things are Zeus and so on. And the tiniest fuck up, they're going to hear about it instantly, either from myself or from you, when they fuck up. And it's not going to turn out well if it's something drastic that they fuck up. Because, despite what people may think, yes, our roles in Company HQ, obviously very important. But the role of a Zeus operator is incredibly important. I mean, it is your job to make the operations fun. That's what everybody is here for at the end of the day, is for those operations. So if you suck at it and those operations suck, you now just ruined 60 people's fucking night. So that job is so much more important than what most people give it credit for. But again, for Task Force Bravo Sunday, it was a very good operation, it seemed, from everybody's perspective. I didn't hear anybody say, oh no, it was boring, or I didn't have fun. Everybody got some action Sunday night. And that includes Locke, who just joined us. Locke, you started the operation kind of filling in as squad lead until your actual squad leader was able to get in there, and then you took your role back as fire team leader. How did the operation go from your perspective?
Yeah, it was chaotic from pretty much the time we got to the castle. So at the beginning, I was filling in for 2-2, and 2-2 squad leader disconnected, so I had to step up. And once we got to that castle, just when those mortars started coming down, it was just crazy, because we had 2IC stepping up a lot. The squad leader actually came back, so then I stepped down to team lead again. but we were losing him left and right, and just having to dodge all these mortars all the time. So yeah, it was pretty crazy.
But did you have fun?
Yeah, it was fun. Definitely. There was always, something to do, always something to pay attention to. It's not like we were sitting around twiddling our thumbs.
Right. All right, so like I said, I mean, it seemed like everybody had a really good time. The operation went off pretty much flawlessly, with the exception to the POWs getting killed. But again, that was just a matter of shit luck. Things can't always go in our favor, unfortunately. But the operation itself, the planning of it, the execution of the planning, everything went perfectly. So real quickly before we move on to the next subject, I want to let you guys in chat know that we are doing a giveaway tonight for the Laws of War DLC, and that'll be coming up towards the end. So if you want a copy of the Laws of War DLC for free, and again, unfortunately, I can only do this on the Twitch side. I can't do it on the YouTube side because the giveaway setup for that is dog shit. So I can only do it on the Twitch side. But if you guys want a free copy of the Laws of War DLC, you'll get information on how to enter that here in a little bit, all done through chat. As well as when we give that away, I will be making an announcement for another giveaway, which is going to be pretty goddamn big. So you guys will want to be here for that, because I can pretty much guarantee most all of you will want to get involved in that. So definitely make sure you hang around until the end if you can. Now that being said, last week, we talked on the subject of leadership. Me and Locke went into pretty detailed explanations of what we thought makes a good leader, what makes a bad leader, and so on. And I didn't really think about it at the time, but we didn't really talk about our history with the unit and what we've done here, why we originally came here, and so on, which we probably should have. I just kind of assumed that everybody kind of knew, somewhat who we were, what we did, and so on. But I didn't really want to take that for granted. So what I want to do tonight is just kind of give guys, listening to the podcast, an idea of who we are in the unit, where we originally came into the unit from, why we got involved in realism, and kind of the difference, at least in my eyes, as to the difference between milsim and realism. Because in my eyes, there is a very distinct difference between the two. So what I want to do first is, Locke, since you're kind of the junior guy out of us in here, fill us in on how you came into the 506th and, what you've done here, kind of your history with us.
All right. Well, I didn't get Arma 3 until pretty late, actually. Like, I didn't buy it when it first came out. I played the crap out of Arma 2. I had, 1,400 hours or something in it. And was part of a different milsim group at the time. I think it was 7th Cav or something. But anyway, years later, I decided to get Arma 3 on sale, and I'm not going to play it just like regular. So I went on YouTube and searched around for different videos for realism and milsim, and then the 506 came up, Captain Drumheller's videos. So I saw one particular video called Eastwood or Pale Horse or something like that, and I knew immediately that I wanted to apply for that unit.
Oh, that was a good couple of missions. I think, Hammer, you were there for those as well, weren't you? For Eastwood and Pale Horse?
Yeah, one or two of them, yeah.
Yeah, those were good ones. All right, go on.
So yeah, I ended up watching those videos twice over. They're an hour and a half long or whatever, and then finally applied. And coming in, I'd been rusty from the whole milsim realism stuff. I hadn't done it in years and years. So going through OSA was a lot of fun. It was relearning everything all over again. And once I got in, I think I was in 2-1 with Staff Sergeant Shundo in 2-1 Bravo. After that, after a while, moved up to team lead for 2-1 Bravo. Decided for a change, switched over to 1-4 and led 1-4 Delta as Moz Gunner. And shortly after that, moved yet again. Now I'm 1-1 Alpha's team leader. So yeah, it's been a lot of team lead slots. I think I had an opportunity a couple times to move up to squad leader, but just never made that jump.
Skip the part about going to reserves, dick.
Yeah, there was a period I just needed a break. A lot of stuff going on, and just kind of get burnt out. Plus, at the time, my PC was a piece of crap too, and needed upgrading, so took a break.
No. The reason I point that out isn't to just bust Locke's balls. Even though I'll do it anyways. You went to reserve, dick. The reason I point that out is a lot of times, like, people would, they'd wonder, like, why the fuck do you even have a reserves? And, isn't that a little too serious and this and that, whatever. It's not like, going to reserves where, like, the real world where you gotta, come in and do your fucking trainings and stuff once a month. You do still have to stay, like, active on the forums and stuff like that, but it's there so that guys can take a break. Because that does happen. Guys get burnt out, when you really apply yourself to this, whether it be our unit or, any realism unit, when you really apply yourself, you realize how much time that you actually start putting into it. Guys, myself at one point as a platoon sergeant, I was, running a platoon, doing operations, filling in for every operation. I was an OSUT instructor and a recruit instructor at the same time. So I was putting upwards of 40 hours a week into this unit. So it's, guys get burnt out and they have to take a break, and that's completely understandable. That's why reserves are there, so that guys can take that break. And we, highly encourage guys, if you are feeling burnout, take a break, go to reserves for a little while, so that they don't get to that point where they're like, yeah, fuck it, I'm done, I'm just leaving. It's much better to just take a break for a month, 2 months, whatever, so that you can come back refreshed and ready to, hit it again.
Yeah, something real quick worth mentioning, and like you said, encourage people to do that, because not only will they reach that breaking point, but if they're in a certain position, you're probably going to start failing at that position just because you're not into it. Stuff's going to be late, or you're going to miss things, and it's better to go reserves than to stay in that position and, force yourself and do the wrong thing or do a poor job at it. At least that's my opinion.
And that, like you said, there was probably a couple chances for you to move up as a squad leader, and you chose not to. You chose to stay in the team lead role. And that kind of dovetails into the history of myself and Hammer. Our history with the unit is very closely tied, as a lot of guys know. Some don't. So, firstly, Hammer, give us kind of a rundown on how you came into the unit, how you've come up to the ranks, or come up through the ranks, and so on.
Well, just, I guess, some backstory. I don't know. I've always wanted a game that was more of a serious military, army, not simulation per se, but just a game. I played a lot of America's Army back in the day, and ever since that went to 3.0, I thought that game went to shit. So I was always looking for that, and one day I stumbled across, it was a YouTube video. It wasn't drums. It was Devil Dog Gamer, and I was like, okay, Arma, this is interesting. And I'd see it on the shelves. I didn't really look into it, whatever. And then I was doing some research, and Arma 3 was coming out. So right when I built a PC just for Arma 3, and then the alpha was released in March, and I think I picked it up like 2 weeks later. So I played a lot of Arma 3 alpha, which was, looking back, that was 4.5 years ago already. Which is pretty crazy. So I joined a milsim unit. I tried to peek up at a couple of them. At that point, the 15th MEU was, or 15th MU was only on Arma 2. They hadn't switched over to Arma 3 yet. And they're also a Marine milsim. I was more of an Army, interested in the Army stuff. So I did this Army milsim group. They were more of a relaxed milsim. I was there for about 18 months and ended up kind of going through the ranks there a little bit. And then the unit folded, and right around the time this unit stood up, the 506th, which was like, oh great, it's Jester 814 and Army. That's fucking awesome. And I was like pretty burned out at that point, to overuse that phrase, but it only lasted like 2 weeks. And recruitment here was shut down because of the success and excitement and hype of this unit, because so many people were coming in. And as soon as recruiting opened up in early January of 2015, I signed up and went through all the training and been here ever since.
Now, when you initially came into the 506, did you have plans to, be in a leadership position? Was that something that you were interested in from Jump Street, or did you just kind of want to be one among many?
I really want to be one among many, because at that point I'd been running that other unit for about close to a year, pretty much. I was involved in a lot of the operation stuff there, and I was really, really tired of a lot of the burden, especially in smaller MILSIM units. Work really falls on the shoulders of 1 to 2 people, and it's really easy for those 2 people or 3 people or whatever it may be for them to get sick and tired of it. Mm-hmm. And people just show up whenever they want and don't really share in the burden. Whereas here, there are jobs, there are responsibilities that people are held to, and frankly, it's popular enough to where if people aren't performing to the standard they need to be, there's 4 people waiting in line to do it, which attracted me because that enforces accountability. Whereas in a small MILSIM unit, it's like, okay, whether people show up or not, you can't really do shit about it. No one else is going to do it, so it's between you and your close-knit group that you have there. Here, I just wanted to kind of get back, maybe run a fire team, meet some new people in the online community and the Arma community, and yeah, so that's pretty much what I wanted to do.
Right, and that's kind of where our, I guess, history together begins. You came in a couple months before I did. I graduated OSUT in April and came in as a rifleman. And that was also my goal, was just to be one among many. I didn't want any leadership position or anything like that. I just kind of, wanted to hang out. Because I as well had seen YouTube videos of guys doing Arma 3. And it was the old MSO videos from Devil Dog, which again, same situation that got you into it. Now, coming into this, like I said, I didn't really want to lead anything, just wanted to be, a bullshit rifleman. And when I was getting ready to graduate OSUT, I had a great OSUT class. We had a full class of 16 guys. And I still to this day remember the guys that were in my fire team in OSUT. When I was getting ready to graduate, I was like every day checking the roster as to what was open. And I knew that I wanted to be in Havoc 1 because I had seen multiple videos by that point of Havoc 1 operating. And I knew that was my platoon. That's where I wanted to go. I didn't care where I ended up in that platoon, but I wanted to be in Havoc 1. And pouring over the roster every day, and I seen that there was a rifleman position open in Havoc 1. It was one of the only openings in the entire platoon. And I was like, I'm going for that position. I'm going to be fucking pissed if I don't get that rifleman position. And that rifleman position was in Havoc 1-2, 2nd Squad. And I got the position. I was excited as fuck that I was able to get that spot in Havoc 1-2. Didn't know anybody in the squad. Had never talked to anybody in the squad ever. But I was in 1st Platoon, and that made me happy. So I get into 1-2 as a rifleman, and that is where I met you, Franklin, Hammond, Williams, Person, Ollie, all those guys. And for those of you that have never really heard, I guess, the lore of Havoc 1-2, at that time when I first came into the unit, and for a little while following, we had kind of the all-star team when it came to rifle squads. Guys that have now all, at one point or another, moved up to very high leadership positions, done very well in the unit, and so on. guys like I was saying, Franklin, Hammer, myself, Williams, Person, all those guys, we all moved up with the exception of Hammond, or as you guys generally hear us call him, Amish. Amish is that E4 Mafia for life, but he's still one of the original guys. But I got into the squad, and we all got along amazingly. We were constantly hanging out with each other. It was pretty much every day that we would all hang out with each other and team speak and bullshit and so on. And it was an absolute perfect squad. Everybody, like I said, got along with each other. We worked really well together. We trained really well together. And this was also at a time where they required us to do weekly team trainings as well as weekly squad trainings. Now, about that time is when my team leader in 1-2 Bravo, Hammer was in 1-2 Alpha, and Franklin was his team leader, and Wischiff was our squad leader. Well, my team leader was pretty goddamn flaky, and I was still a PV2 at the time, but they got approval from Platoon HQ and asked me if I wanted the team lead position. And nobody else was really stepping up to take the position, and I had already filled it multiple times as a 2IC. So I said, yeah, fuck it, I'll do it if nobody else is going to do it. So I stepped up as a team leader. And not long after that, Wischiff had to depart as squad lead, so Franklin moved up to squad lead. So then we had Franklin as a squad leader, Hammer as the Alpha team lead, and me as the Bravo team lead. And that was, at least in my eyes, kind of the perfect storm of 1-2. That's when we really came into our own. And that was during probably the toughest deployment that any of us have ever seen. That was during Operation Red Hammer, which for any of you guys that have followed the unit for a while will remember, operations like Red Hammer 215, where we lost the airfield and we're getting overrun, and it was just absolute chaos. Or towards the end of the operation when we fought in Electro and I had a fucking hospital dropped on my head. Those operations were absolutely insane. And me and Hammer were team leaders together through all of that. Now, not long after that, Avery, who was the weapons squad leader at the time, stepped up to take Havoc 1-6, which is the platoon leader position. Havoc 1-7 was Heckman, who you guys have probably heard all of us talk about. Still to this day, in my opinion, the best platoon sergeant we've ever had. So when Avery moved up to 1-6, the position of 1-4 was offered to me immediately. And by that point, I know myself, I had already turned down 2 or 3 squad lead positions in other platoons, and I believe, Hammer, you did as well, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so both of us had already turned down squad leader positions, and I don't think it was that either one of us were scared of being squad leaders, but we were very good team leaders, especially together. And I know, at least for myself, I didn't want to leave the platoon. I didn't want to leave the squad, but I especially didn't want to leave the platoon because Havoc 1 was my guys. And me and Hammer worked so well together that I wasn't going to go to another platoon. So I turned down a couple different squads, and then 1-4 was offered to me. And at that point, I knew that I could do the job as 1-4. Or at least I had an idea that I could do a pretty damn good job as 1-4. And there were other guys that were ready to step up as team leaders by that point. So it was kind of me getting out of the way, making room for new blood, and also stepping up, not wanting to see someone that possibly, wasn't really in it for the same reasons taking over 1-4. So I moved up to 1-4 as squad lead. And I was squad leader for 1-4 for quite some time, about 8 months. And my time with 1-4 was pretty well documented as far as what we did, how well the squad worked. And I will argue with anyone that my time as 1-4, by the end of my time with 1-4, they were hands down the best operating squad in the unit. We were the only full squad, not a single hole, and my guys showed up week after week after week, and they put in fucking work. I beat the shit out of those guys, and they took it and smiled and asked for more. And that's what made us so effective, not just as a rifle squad, but as a squad in a whole. We were able to do anything and everything. Now, a little while after me moving to 1-4, Sergeant Franklin had to go to reserves, and at that point, that is when Hammer moved up to 1-2. So yet again, me and Hammer were working together again. Wasn't at a team lead level, it was at squad lead. So we were working together on platoon net instead of squad net. And it kind of felt like the old days again, because Person was running 1-3. So it was me, Hammer, and Person working together with Clark as 1-1. And I think at that point, that was when Havoc 1 was at its strongest, was with the four of us working together as squad leaders. And going back, looking at old videos of, operations and platoon trainings and so on, not to fucking, stroke our own ego, but Havoc 1 were some badass motherfuckers back then. I mean, there was nothing that we couldn't take on and at least fucking, slow it down. And that's, we had hands down the craziest missions that have ever been seen. Again, I'll mention the bridge mission that we mentioned last week. Hammer was right there with us in that. And, even after that, we were a very well-oiled machine. And we worked great together. And after, again, being 1-4 for about 8 months, I then moved up to Platoon HQ after we lost both our platoon leader and platoon sergeant. So myself and Person moved up to Platoon HQ because me and Hammer basically had to have a slap fight as to who was going to take platoon sergeant, because neither one of us wanted to take it, but one of us had to. So it was basically me and Hammer having a goddamn playing like Rochambeau to decide who was going to take the platoon sergeant position, because we both agreed that Person was the person to be the officer, because neither one of us ever wanted to go officer. It just feels dirty, and those bars look like shit. But the agreement we made basically was that I would take platoon sergeant for Havoc 1, and when we reopened Havoc 2, that Hammer would take platoon sergeant for Havoc 2, and that eventually happened. So yet again, I was platoon sergeant, Hammer was one of my squad leaders, so we were still working together. And then Havoc 2 opened, and he took platoon sergeant for Havoc 2. So now we weren't working directly together, but we were still working together as platoon sergeants. And when it came to planning our operations and who was going to do what and so on, me and Hammer were still working together. Now, after we opened Havoc 3, and we kicked Williams's dumbass down to Havoc 3 to become Platoon HQ, which, again, another guy that worked with us in 1-2. After a while, it came to a point that we needed to open up Company HQ. And at that point, it again was a matter of, okay, who's going to take first sergeant? Is it going to be me or Hammer? So again, we basically played Rochambeau and fought back and forth. And I took the first sergeant position.
There was no fucking question. It was your goddamn job, so.
Well, yeah. It was always kind of, I guess, pre-assumed that I would take the position. But everybody knew, everybody that was involved knew that both of us could easily do the job. Both of us were plenty fucking qualified. So I moved up to first sergeant, and Hart was our XO. So again, we weren't working directly together, but I was first sergeant, Hammer was one of my platoon sergeants. So we were working with each other still. And then Hart had to go to reserves due to school and so on. So now it was a matter of who's going to be the XO. Who are we going to get out of all of our guys to step up into an officer position. Because the most qualified guys we had, not even so much the most qualified, the most experienced guys we had were all enlisted, which is generally how it works in the military. Your most experienced guys are enlisted, not your officers. However, from here, because we don't have an OCS, an officer candidate school or anything like that, all of our officers come from the enlisted ranks. However, oftentimes it tends to be junior, well, not really junior NCOs, but less experienced NCOs that get promoted to an officer position because of the fact that we prefer to have that SNCO be the more experienced NCO. But in this case, we really didn't feel comfortable, with the options we had. The best option we had was Hammer. But now it was a matter of trying to convince Hammer to lose his stripes and take an officer position. Something that both of us said we would never do. However, Hammer, being the absolute badass that he is, said, yeah, I'll do whatever needs to be done for the unit. I'll suck up my own pride and take a butter bar for the good of the unit. And actually, I don't even think you took a butter bar, did you? Didn't we promote you straight to first lieutenant?
Yes.
Yeah, so you didn't even have to deal with a butter bar. He went straight to first lieutenant because of his experience. So that is and where we find ourselves now, as Drum as the company commander, Hammer as the XO, and myself as the first sergeant. And so our history in this unit has been very tied to each other. We've worked with each other pretty much throughout our entire 2.5, almost 3 years in this unit. We have worked pretty much side by side, which is why I cannot fucking stand this guy. And I'm sure the feeling is mutual.
Yes.
Thank you. So, that being said, that gives you guys kind of a little bit of insight as to, our history with the unit, what we've done here, and so on. And I guess why we are as close of friends that we are, despite us constantly telling each other to fuck off and so on. It's just because we love each other. But what I want to kind of go into off of that, as far as our experience, not just with this unit, but with other ARMA stuff in general, because all of us have been involved in some other type of unit or ARMA dealings, is the difference between realism and milsim. And Locke, first I want to ask you, do you think there's any difference between realism and milsim?
Oh, absolutely. Milsim, excuse me, milsim, utilizes tactics, and tries to hold true to that, whereas realism has a lot more roleplay involved, I find. The rules are more strict, and that also bleeds over into, out of game, where if it's in TeamSpeak, if we're going over things in a channel that's official, we call everyone by rank. We show the respect where it's due. And I'm not sure if other, I don't think other milsims go to that degree that realism does.
Mm-hmm.
Some might, I don't know, but that's how I see it initially, in any case, in my opinion. Those two major things.
Right. And what would you say, Hammer? Do you think there's kind of that same differentiation between realism and milsim?
Yeah, but for my experience, it's more of that line between realizing the fact it's a video game versus simulating polishing your boots and watching a roadblock for 6 hours. Right. And so while I consider us both a milsim and a realism unit, I do consider us more prioritizing the enjoyment of being a part of the community here rather than paperwork and polishing brass. So but there definitely is a difference, but that balance in between those two parts, as well as the extremes in both of those, are kind of the reasons why I wanted to settle here.
Right. And at least for me, I think the kind of term of milsim or realism, they're kind of interchangeable in the sense that, there's realism units that classify themselves as milsim and stuff like that. I don't think necessarily what you do, I don't think you can necessarily classify it by simply milsim or realism, because even realism is a military simulation community. Realism is milsim. I think really where the difference is, kind of like Locke was saying, is more so the structure, the discipline involved is more indicative of a realism unit. But also, like you said, there are guys that take it a little too far, where they're doing resupply operations where you're not actually engaging anything, you're just walking around in a server, or you're simulating guys at parade rest for just standing there for an hour for whatever reason. That, yes, while it is deemed realism, it's not fucking fun. So I'd rather have milsim, where it's fun, than have that detail of realism. But where I think it's more on the milsim side is groups that are, more so kind of the secret squirrel stuff, where they just wear whatever, carry whatever. Okay, we're going to go do this. They don't use any ranks. They don't use realistic names or, anything like that. They don't necessarily have a command structure. They always have, guys that are in leadership and stuff like that, but it's not as organized as what realism is. And I think, to me, that's the main difference, is the organization and the discipline between the two. It's not so much that we're more realistic because we wear the right camouflage or carry the right weapons, or guys are like, well, it's not realism because you're in third person. All right, first of all, you can suck a dick. I don't care about your opinion. But it's more so about the discipline and the structure of everything that, in my eyes, makes realism separate itself from milsim. But the reason I kind of bring that up is, when you look at, say, like LaRue's community, which a lot of you guys know our good buddy LaRue. If you haven't, make sure you go check out his channel. But like LaRue's community isn't classified as realism, but it's classified as milsim. But they are very structured. They have their own ranking system. They have their own personnel spreadsheets, a lot of the same stuff that we do, but they don't use, realistic names. They don't have necessarily the same style of command structure. It's not the same discipline. Guys will dick off more and stuff like that. And, despite them being very similar to us, I wouldn't classify it as a realism unit because of those aspects, even though they use proper tactics and a lot of the times the same communication and so on that we do. It's not realism because of that difference of, the discipline. But that being said, obviously we, the three of us, prefer realism over, kind of the more, I guess, lackadaisical attitude, if you will, of milsim. But like the other brewer was kind of saying in chat, that despite it being realism and being very structured and stuff like that, I think, or at least I hope, a lot of guys understand that, especially us in higher level leadership positions, our first concern is always going to be the guys and whether they're having a good time. Because again, like you said, it's a game. We're here to have fun. And different people have fun in different ways, but still, ultimately, our goal, especially in a command position, is always going to be the guys, and if they're enjoying their time here. Because, just like it says in our mission statement, if you're not having fun, if the guys aren't having fun, then there's no point in this unit existing. And I think that's, something that really makes this community work, is how much guys care, and how much, and even not just us at a command level, but pretty much all guys in the leadership level, show how much they care about the guys that they're responsible for and ensure that everybody's having fun and that morale doesn't get too low. Because, like you said, as far as not passing down that information that the POWs had been killed, that is something that weighs on our minds pretty much at all times, is the morale of our guys. And I think you would agree with that, right, Hammer?
Oh, absolutely. And I think a lot of it, too, I mean, just the culture here that's been developed in the 506th, I mean, a lot of it came over from the previous Milsim unit, I think, as far as the structure, that military-type founding and such, but even more so refined to a point in maintaining that balance of community morale and such. And then even, I mean, in the last year and a half, all the work that's been done to focus more on the mission, environment, and entertainment while maintaining that same structure. I mean, earlier I mentioned accountability. Where if someone's not pulling their weight, I mean, we're all here to have fun, we're all here to do what we need to do, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done to do that. So if someone isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing, whether it be filling out a training report, or whether it be, doing all the personnel backroom stuff or mission template, whatever it may be, all the steps that need to be done 1 through 45 each week for an operation. It's very clear here that when you join and you commit to doing something for this unit, you are expected to do it. And if not, there's 4 other people lined up who would be able to do it. And with that being said, that accountability, that higher standard, is something that really attracted me to this balance. And yeah, it's RP. It's something that I think is a turnoff for a lot of people out there. It was originally for me when I was looking at Milsim communities, but after my experience in those type of communities, I mean, just that discipline and dedication and accountability, it's extremely difficult to enforce. And with that, and where it's here in Zig, we have all that figured out, just with our structure, mostly figured out, I should say.
I think it's worth noting too, to put special emphasis on how much work actually goes into the missions that are created, behind the scenes. It's easy to come into, a stream and watch, a mission going down, but there's a lot of planning that went into, everything beforehand, and I'm not, up to speed on exactly what goes on behind the scenes, but I do know it's a lot of work on your part from everyone involved in it to get it set up.
Yeah, and that's, I think a lot of people, especially on the outside, who have, no involvement in it, they have no way of understanding how much work goes into making something like this successful, and continue to be successful. And it's not just the guys you see on the ground in the operations in our streams. Those guys, whether it be a fire team member all the way up to a platoon leader, those guys dedicate a lot of time to their roles. If they're doing it right, and not even gonna say right. If they're good at their job, they're most likely dedicating a lot of time to it. And that's not even the bulk of it. Like, what you see in an operation, that's just a flash in the pan of everything else that goes into this unit. Whether it be the planning meetings that happen before the operation to come up with those, pictures that we show you guys in the stream, all the way up to all of the guys in the battalion staff section that volunteer for the S shops, that do just an insane amount of work to make all of this work. Especially the guys in S1 who, Hammer runs S1, and if anybody knows how much work they do, it's him. And the amount that goes into just a single individual, the amount of work that goes into that individual from the time they fill out their application all the way through their entire career, if you will, with this unit, the amount of time that S1 puts into each individual is just insane. With, getting their application handled, doing the background checks, making sure everything is good, getting their application processed, adding them to the personnel spreadsheet, taking care of their TIG and their promotion points, getting their promotions done, updating their forum profiles, all of that stuff, their transfers, everything. S1 does a crazy amount of work to get all of that done. And I know, Hammer, like, you've been able to kind of back off a little bit, luckily, with, being able to bring in some more clerks and stuff. But, I mean, as a rough estimate, how much time would you say that you put into the S1 stuff, say, in a week, just from what you handle?
It depends. I mean, until recently, it was probably anywhere between 10 and 20 hours a week, I would guess.
Okay, and that's 10 to 20 hours on top of, you work a full-time fucking job. You're not like my asshole self that gets to sit at home and fucking play video games for a living. You work a full-time job and turn around and put in that much time into just that one aspect of your job here in the unit. Just that one thing of being S1 OIC.
Yeah, it's tough to differentiate, I guess, which part is only on S1. But I mean, just to kind of elaborate on that, I mean, S1 is a team of about 18 people, from recruiters to clerks to people in awards and decorations. And yeah, we are looking at expanding it. But I mean, getting back to that accountability thing, I mean, it's a team of people that I know are going to be able to get the shit done that they need to get done. And all I'm there is to just supervise and make sure it's getting done correctly. Now, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I do as from clerk basis, but yeah, I mean, it's an impossible task for one person to do by themselves, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And like you said, I mean, 18 people to handle S1, which it is the biggest shop as far as the amount of personnel involved in it. The next following that would probably be S3, which the S3 side of things, I run all of the training side of things. Captain runs the operational side of things. We've kind of divvied it up that way, and it works out really well. And, for my S3 side of things, when I took over running, well, first I took over running recruit training because I was a recruit trainer for almost a year. And then I ended up becoming a OSUT instructor. And a lot of you guys have seen, me teach OSUT. Some of you guys were probably in my OSUT classes. And when I took over as the OSUT chief at that time, I had to write a new document that had supposed to have been done 3 months before that. And again, that's where accountability comes into play. Accountability was lacking at that time. I got the new document wrote, and then when I took over as S3 chief overall, I just kind of maintained the position I already had as recruit chief and OSUT chief and just piled it into one as OSUT chief. And so now I am responsible for all the training. So I myself put in quite a bit of time. As those of you guys that watch the streams know, I'm doing OSUT for anywhere from 2 to 3 hours every Saturday and Sunday. Every single weekend, I'm in OSUT for 2 to 3 hours. And then also, we have the second OSUT class that runs Tuesdays, Thursdays, and I will help out with that when needed. So, I easily put in probably anywhere from 15 to 20 hours a week just in OSUT, Zeus stuff, and then, my first sergeant duties, if you will. So I think that's a lot of people don't quite understand how much time, how much time it takes to make something like this successful. But like you were saying, Hammer, a lot of that comes to accountability. And, if someone's not putting in the work that they signed up for, someone else will. And that's one of the amazing things about this community, is that there's always someone ready to step up and do that work. And if we didn't have that, it wouldn't be successful. If we didn't have 4 or 5 guys ready to instantly raise their hand and say, "Yep, I'll do that job," we wouldn't be successful. But one of the big reasons I think guys are so willing to step up and do that is because of how successful the unit is, and they want to see it continue moving forward. They don't want to see that accountability start dropping, because those of us, especially that have been here a while, know what it's like when that accountability isn't there and how bad it can be. And nobody wants to see that happen again, which is why we have strived so much, like you said, in the last year and a half, especially on the operational side of things, to make things enjoyable and to hold everybody accountable for, you know, those operations, especially our Zeus operators. Like I was saying earlier, you know, our Zeus operators are hands down one of the most important jobs in the unit. And those guys are held to an insanely high standard. Believe me, you guys think I bitch at, you know, OSUT students and stuff. It's nothing compared to how much I will bitch out one of my Zeus operators if they fuck up, because of how important that job is.
And that goes back to what we mentioned last week about letting the small things go. Like, we never let the small things go because they turn into big things.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where accountability comes into play. But I think that pretty much, you know, wraps up kind of our history with the unit and what we've done here and so on. So what I want to do right now is, if you guys are looking at the Twitch chat, I'm going to open a raffle. And it is now open. So if you guys type !raffle in the Twitch chat, it will automatically enter you into the raffle. Now, this raffle is going to be for a free copy of the Laws of War DLC. Alright, so if you want a free copy of the new DLC for Arma, you can enter the raffle. Now, to kind of forewarn you, in order for me to give you this DLC, you will have to message me on Twitch after I choose a winner. You'll have to message me on Twitch and give me your Steam details, and I will add you to my Steam friends. That way I can send you the DLC. Alright? So again, once I message someone, or once I choose a winner, I'll give that person a few minutes to message me with their Steam details on Twitch. If that person doesn't message me within a couple minutes, then I will choose a new winner. Alright, so again, !raffle. Don't enter it multiple times in the chat because it'll automatically be removed. Or it'll automatically remove you from the raffle. So make sure you only enter it once, and it's all lowercase. Alright, so good luck to everybody on that. So while that raffle is going, what I'm going to do is announce what it is I've been teasing you guys with for the last week or so. And that is another raffle. However, that raffle is going to work a little bit differently. What we're going to do is, thanks to all of you guys watching, all of your guys' support, all the follows, the donations, the subscriptions, and so on, this channel has been doing much better than I ever would have dreamed of. We're just short of 2,000 followers at this point. I think I looked last night and I had 17 subscribers, which is all half off right now, which is kind of cool. So things have been going much better than I ever would have dreamed of for my channel. So with that being said, I've decided I want to try and give back to one of you guys somehow. And the way I'm going to do that is, we are going to do a raffle where for the next 30 days, right? That's 30, so a month from today, every single person that donates starting tonight, so everybody that donated tonight, you're automatically entered. Every person that donates a minimum of $1, $1 will automatically be entered into the raffle to win a GTX 1070 graphics card. Now, money from the donations are going to go towards paying for the card. I'm putting $100 in right off the bat from myself. If guys want to donate to, help pay for the card, that's perfectly fine. But I'm telling you guys that it doesn't matter if you donate $1 or $300. Everybody's chance to win this 1070 is going to be the same. I don't want any of you guys feeling that you're going to miss out because you can't give $50 or you can't give $20, whatever. It's $1. I know myself, if I didn't have a 1080, I would be jumping on that at a chance to pay $1 to get a fucking $400 graphics card. But that being said, if this does go really well, and with my addition to it, if we get more than what is needed to pay for the 1070, I'm going to add stuff to the giveaway and choose more winners. So I will be, depending upon how much we get, I will give away a headset. I'll probably give away a HyperX Cloud 2 because that's what I have, and I know it's a great headset, as well as maybe a gaming keyboard, whatever. Basically, I'm kind of taking a month off, if you will, from what I'm going to receive as far as donations. And what I get is all going to go into this giveaway. So that if we get, hundreds of dollars, I'm just going to keep adding shit to the giveaway and keep drawing more winners to give you guys more stuff. And again, I'm taking the donations away from me to give shit away to you guys as appreciation for all of the support that you guys have shown me over the last year or so. And what'll happen is every single night, everybody that donates, I will copy and paste their name into a Google Drive. Everybody will automatically be assigned a number. When the time comes to draw it, I will use the random number picker thing on Google, and I'll click it, and whatever number it comes with, I'll scroll through the list and see who that number correlates to. Now, the very important thing is here, guys, and I see that a couple of you are already donating. I can't thank you enough. Make sure that you are using your Twitch name or your YouTube name in that donation. All right, don't change it to any special name or anything. Make sure you use your Twitch name or your YouTube name, because that's how I'm going to have to contact the winner. I will message you on Twitch or on YouTube if you've been selected as a winner. You don't have to be here when the drawing is made. You do not have to be in the podcast when I draw the winner. I will find you and contact you with the information. Now, the unfortunate side of things are, since the last time I had to ship things overseas, it's actually quite a pain in the ass when you don't work for the Department of Defense. So I do have to restrict this to North America. So those of you guys in Europe, I'm very sorry, but it's an absolute pain in the dick to ship things over there to you. So just keep that in mind. It is going to have to be guys in North America. Yes, that even includes people like you, Locke, in the fucking way north. And no, guys, you do not need to redonate. Those of you guys that have donated, I know who you are, so that's not a huge deal. I know who you are. But that being said, I also do not have to be online. I don't have to be live streaming for you guys to donate. I automatically get, see all donations and stuff. I get an email when somebody donates to me. So every day I'll go through and add that to the list. And like I said, you don't have to be in the stream when I choose a winner. When I choose a winner, I'll pick that number, I'll contact that person, get their details, and also keep in mind, guys, you're going to have to give me your address and stuff, and I'll try not to stalk you too much. But you'll give me your details, and I will order the 1070 straight through either Amazon or Newegg and have it shipped directly to you. And you'll have a brand new $400 graphics card sitting on your front door within a week of you winning. All right. So that is kind of the, big announcement, if you will, that for the next month, we're going to try to give away some shit to you guys and hopefully get one of you guys a nice 1070 card and give you, a jump start on building your next system or upgrading your current system. And again, if we get more, then I will just add to the list of stuff we're going to give away. And with each thing I give away, it's going to be a whole new winner. So unless your name gets drawn twice, you're not going to get a 1070 and a headset and a bunch of cool shit. It'll be a different person each time. And again, everybody has the exact same odds of winning. So even if you're my best friend in the whole fucking world, you got the same chances as Joe fucking Nobody in North Dakota. Doesn't matter who you are. Everybody's got the same chance.
Communist.
Yes. But you love it. Actually, you don't love it, because you already got a fucking 1080 Ti. You got a better card than I do, dickhead.
Yeah. I'm still going to donate.
Aw, see?
I'm just kidding.
Hammer's such a nice guy. So, yeah, guys. That's going to be ongoing for the next 30 days. And I know I already spoke to good old Wee Woo himself. He's going to be kind of advertising a little bit on his channel as well. And if it goes well, you guys may even see a possible giveaway from that LaRue guy in the future as well. So, you guys want another fucking crack at something like, oh, I don't know, like a 6700K CPU, something like that. May want to see how well this goes, and if it goes really well, you might want to pay attention to his channel in the next month. So, yes, that LaRue guy does suck. We kind of like him, though, a little bit. Well, at least we do. Hammer hates him. He thinks he's a total fucking douchebag.
Garbage. Straight
Yes.
garbage.
So, that being said, we're going to go ahead and draw the winner for the Laws of War DLC. And if for some reason you're a dipshit that already owns it, please let me know when you message me on fucking Twitch. So, that being said, let's draw ourselves a winner here. And the winner is Real Chalupa. So, Real Chalupa, I will give you a couple of minutes to shoot me a message on Twitch with your Steam details. And once you do, I will get that sent over to you. And congratulations on winning the Laws of War DLC. Alright, there we go. He was on that shit. He has already sent it. Alright, guys. So, all of that done and over with. Again, I cannot thank you guys enough for all of the support you have shown over the last year or so. The channel, again, has grown way more than I ever would have thought it would. And hopefully you guys have enjoyed the podcast tonight. I know I enjoyed it. It was nice to have Locke in here yet again, and very nice to have Hammer be able to come in and join us tonight. Obviously me and him are pretty good buddies, and it was nice to get to reminisce a little bit about the old days, if you will. So yeah, thank you, Hammer and Locke, for joining us. If you want to say goodbye to the guys.
Oh,
Thanks for hanging out, guys. Have a good Wednesday.
Yeah, you guys too. And yeah, who knows? Maybe see you later.
All right. So, again, thank you guys for joining us tonight. Hopefully you enjoyed, and we will be back at it next Wednesday for podcast number 3. And I will give you guys kind of a running total week by week on how the giveaway is going for the 1070, and just kind of keep you guys updated on, when we hit the goal, if we go over the goal, what we're going to shoot for next, and so on and so forth. And hopefully I will see you guys then. We're going to be back live here in probably about an hour for a squirrel mission. So hopefully you guys will be able to join us for that. And I will see you guys next week. Have a good one.